Stigma is the process by which we construct a negative evaluation or a social disapproval or shame around a group of people and the members that belong to this group. Our stigmas have different origins. Some part of it we can look at as evolutionary, so when there's systems of disease and threats to health, then sometimes we have these negative evaluations that pop up towards the people that are experiencing the disease threat. But a large part of stigma is also constructed by systems of power and disparity. So when majority groups, or those who are holding power in society, wish to maintain power, then often the way to do that is to marginalize or stigmatize groups that are not belonging to the majority. So that extends to all kinds of groups. So the different effects of stigma are multifaceted. What we find is that stigma has individual level effects, so including effects on mental health such as depression, anxiety, self-consciousness, internalized negative dialogue towards oneself based on the dialogue that exists all around us. There's also levels of social disengagement that we find because people have an experience of being excluded in society. When people are stigmatized or from stigmatized groups, then what happens is that institutions often don't allow them into their walls. So people end up being excluded from these different structures and systems, and they're unable to participate in, let's say, work and school and social events. So that's another effect that we see, that people are unable to engage. Then you have the internalization of that. So on one hand, you can have people saying, you don't belong here. And after a certain point, the people who are being stigmatized may themselves say, well, I don't belong here, or I don't feel like I can actually fit in here, or I know that I'm not accepted, and so I can't walk in and navigate the space safely. And so I disengage, or I feel a sense of helplessness in the face of this systemic disadvantage. Stigmas are pernicious and pervasive. They're some of the toughest things to change, but it is definitely possible to change them. At an individual level, what it takes is that willingness and openness, but also that willingness to go into the discomfort of recognizing our own stigmas, our own stereotypes, the stereotypes that are against us and the stereotypes we have against others, and unpacking them. Dismantling them is another term that's used. And what that means is that we can recognize, yes, I've been socialized into this bias, into this negative shaming script around these people or those people. And instead we can say, okay, well, I can recognize that I've been socialized into this, that I have this script running, that this is a kind of flash reaction that I have when I see a member from that group. And then from there, what we can say is, oh, but I know that that's not true. And I know where this comes from. And then from there, the next step is, okay, and so I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to have this disgust response that often comes up with stigmatized groups. I don't need to have this sense of danger or anger or blame towards this group because I know where this comes from. And once we know that, then there's an immense sense of relief and freedom and an ability to extend yourself and extend your hand to meet people, to be in the company of others, not just in a way that is tolerant, but in a way that is loving and accepting and happy to be together. The best way to offer support is, first of all, not to pretend that it doesn't exist. Not to pretend that, oh, I don't see your experience, you're just like everybody else. What we need is to be seen. Fundamentally, all people, all individuals need to be seen as they are and accepted as they are. And we need to do the same for others. It's a healing process to do that, just as that first step, that we recognize that this is where that person is, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That we also can recognize that their experience walking through the world will be different, that we're available to them to talk to about their experience of being stigmatized, that we listen and acknowledge their experience of stigmatization. And also that when we're in, different company as well, and we hear other people stigmatizing the group that, let's say, our child or our friend or our lover might be a part of, that we're also prepared to step up and step in and say, hey, you know what, that's not actually right, and that's actually a harmful, problematic, and inaccurate look at the world and perspective against this group. And that way, that not just that you're there for the person, but when harm is coming towards them, you're just silent. But that when harm is coming towards them, you show them, I am here for you. I am not going to let this dialogue and this discourse keep continuing and coming and harming you. I'm going to interrupt the dialogue. I'm going to interrupt the discourse, and I'm going to counter the discourse. A lot of that is found in the discussions around allyship and what it means to be an ally to people who are marginalized. But it's a powerful thing, because it's not just that you're a nice and good and giving person to this person, but that you are a nice and good and giving person who is also informed and who's also prepared to say, you know what, I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to be there for you. We're going to stand together. And you're not alone. And that's powerful. One of the powerful things about a project like this that brings the voices of the invisible, of the disenfranchised, of the stigmatized with mental health issues to the foreground is, one, creating that visibility in representation. Two, humanizing, showing that these are just happy or unhappy, regular, normal people who have these issues. There's nothing abnormal about abnormality, in fact. That we have greater representation, more positive representation, more complex, more rich, more nuanced, more complete representations of these different people and their experiences. It humanizes our gaze towards them instead of dehumanizes our gaze, which is often the case with stigma.